Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the next.
More secondary sanctions
you're going to
very
see a lot
soon.
more.
So this is a taste of
You're
what's
going to
to
see a
come.
lot more. You're
Mr.
going to see so much secondary sanctions. Yes, ma'am.
Africa's largest oil producer, Nigeria, is moving up India's priority list as a key supplier. India's state-owned refiners have significantly increased purchases from Nigeria between September and October. Over 2 million barrels of Nigerian crude are expected to arrive in India.
The stage was set for collapse. Washington's sanctions machine had India in its sights, punishing New Delhi with crushing tariffs for daring to keep Russian oil flowing into its ports. Trump's team believed the math was simple: squeeze India's economy until it broke, force India to abandon Moscow, and replace every discounted Russian barrel with American crude. For weeks, India seemed boxed in. But something happened that Trump never saw coming. Out of the shadows came an unexpected player: Nigeria. Africa's top producer, long treated as a backup supplier, suddenly offered India a lifeline. 2 million barrels of sweet Nigerian crude were quietly locked in. In that single deal, India defied Washington, dodged Trump's tariffs, and reminded the world that it would not be told where to buy its energy. Now the US president is furious. Decades of diplomatic goodwill with India are unraveling, and the oil squeeze strategy has boomeranged. Nigeria, of all countries, has just outmaneuvered a superpower by giving India an escape route. The humiliation for Washington is real, and the symbolism even greater. Africa isn't just supplying oil anymore, it's reshaping global power. So here's the question that now hangs over this entire crisis. What really happened that allowed India to reject US crude and turn to Nigeria at the very moment Trump thought he had New Delhi cornered? In this video, let's find out. The standoff between Washington and New Delhi began the way many of Donald Trump's confrontations do, with tariffs. Since returning to the office, Trump has wanted to reassert American dominance in global trade, using tariffs not only as an economic tool, but as a blunt weapon of geopolitical coercion. Russia's war in Ukraine gave him the perfect justification. While Europe aligned itself closely with Washington and largely cut itself off from Russian crude, India went the opposite way. With a population of 1.4 billion to fuel and an economy racing toward becoming the world's third largest, India prioritized affordability over politics. It imported massive volumes of discounted Russian crude, quickly becoming Moscow's biggest customer. Trump's White House framed this as unacceptable. Senior officials, including Peter Navarro, accused India of directly funding Putin's invasion. The rhetoric was deliberately provocative. By buying Russian barrels, New Delhi was enabling Russian missiles. Washington's solution was to punish India until it stopped. First came 25% tariffs on Indian exports, hitting sectors like pharmaceuticals and textiles that rely heavily on the US market. When India refused to flinch, Trump doubled down, raising the tariff rate to 50%. The calculation in Washington was simple. Smaller economies like Japan, South Korea, and many in Europe had already trimmed or cut Russian imports under US pressure. Why should India be different? Trump expected the same result: a quick capitulation and a new dependency on US crude. It was meant to be another deal-making moment that proved America's ability to dictate global energy flows. But India was not Japan or South Korea. Modi's government responded bluntly. Energy policy, they insisted, would be determined by India's needs, not Washington's demands. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman told Indian media that New Delhi would buy oil from whoever gives the best deal. It was a short statement, but it carried enormous weight. India had drawn a line. It would not sacrifice affordability and national interest to satisfy US strategy. That defiance put New Delhi in a dangerous position. With half its exports to the US under punitive tariffs, it needed to diversify its suppliers quickly. Russia would remain central, But India could not rely on Moscow alone. Somewhere else had to step in, like an unexpected player that could provide barrels without political strings. That is where Nigeria entered the story. India's state-owned Indian Oil Corporation quietly made a decision that shook Washington. In its latest tender, it bypassed U.S. crude entirely and secured 1 million barrels of Nigeria's Agbami grade, 1 million barrels of Nigerian Yusan, and 1 million barrels of Abu Dhabi's Das. On the surface, it was a procurement shift. Beneath the surface, it was a geopolitical thunderclap. The choice of Nigerian crude was not accidental. Nigerian oil is light, sweet, and low in sulfur, making it particularly well-suited for India's refineries. Processing costs are lower compared to American West Texas Intermediate, and logistics from West Africa to India are competitive. But this time, economics and politics are intertwined. By deliberately excluding U.S. barrels, India signaled that Trump's tariffs had backfired. Instead of forcing dependency, they had widened India's options. For Nigeria, this was vindication. After years of internal crises, like oil theft in the Niger Delta, militant attacks on pipelines, and declining investment, many doubted whether Abuja could regain its footing. Yet by mid-2025, things were improving. Security operations had slashed theft losses from 300,000 barrels per day to under 5,000. Rig activity was surging, with over 40 rigs operating compared to fewer than 10 just a few years earlier. Production rebounded to 1.7 million barrels per day in July, the highest in 7 months. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. Selling directly into India, the world's third largest consumer, gave Nigeria more than revenue. It gave credibility. For decades, African oil was treated as second best, bought when Middle Eastern or U.S. supplies faltered, but rarely the first choice. Now Nigeria was front and center, providing barrels not just for commercial reasons, but as part of a defiant stand against U.S. pressure. This was more than a supply deal. It was a symbolic partnership. India demonstrating it would not be bullied. Nigeria proving it could step into the gap when a superpower faltered. But while New Delhi and Lagos celebrated, Washington's credibility took a direct hit. If buying Russian oil was so unacceptable, why were U.S. officials themselves exploring energy deals with Moscow? You see, the biggest blow to Washington's moral authority came not from India or Nigeria, but from its own quiet maneuvering. Reports soon surfaced that while the U.S. punished India for buying Russian oil, its own officials were quietly exploring business opportunities with Moscow. Energy envoy Steve Winberg had reportedly held discussions in Moscow and at an Alaska summit, exploring equipment exports and potential investments by ExxonMobil and other U.S. majors. For India, the hypocrisy was glaring. Trump's team had accused New Delhi of funding Putin's war, yet Washington was simultaneously positioning its own companies for access to the very same sector. This wasn't about morality. It wasn't even about isolating Russia. It was about control, about deciding who could profit and who could not. This double standard emboldened India's decision to pivot toward Nigeria. If the U.S. itself was willing to carve exceptions for its companies, why should India accept punishment for doing the same? In fact, India's move highlighted a deeper truth. The rules enforced by Washington were never truly universal. They were selectively applied to maintain dominance. By exposing this, India and Nigeria gave other nations a precedent. If U.S. rules are contradictory, they can be resisted. If U.S. threats are inconsistent, they can be ignored. And if Washington insists on double standards, alternative partnerships are not only possible, they are necessary. This realization spread beyond India. Across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, governments began watching closely. If India could say no and survive, perhaps they could too. Washington's credibility was bleeding away. That erosion of trust would set the stage for Africa's boldest step yet. moving from the margins of global energy politics to the center. You see, Nigeria's sale to India was not just about barrels, it was about power. For years, African producers were treated as suppliers of convenience, courted only when other sources were disrupted. But India's pivot placed Nigeria at the heart of a major geopolitical realignment. The symbolism could not be ignored. Africa was no longer the backup option. The move reverberated globally. China, Turkey, and Brazil all took note. If India could reject U.S. crude, withstand tariffs, and emerge stronger with African barrels, what stopped them from following? Angola and Libya began repositioning their exports toward Asia, seeing opportunity in the reshuffling of global flows. For Nigeria, the benefits extended far beyond revenue. Indian refiners were not only buying crude, they were investing in Nigeria's infrastructure and technology. The Dangote refinery, Africa's largest, became a cornerstone of this partnership, processing more Nigerian crude and positioning Lagos as a refining hub for the region. Indian capital was flowing into pipelines, terminals, and even agricultural projects tied to broader trade links. This was not an extraction. It was a partnership. And this partnership carried a lesson for Africa as a whole. For decades, the continent had been told it was too unstable, too fragmented, too weak to play a decisive role in global politics. The India-Nigeria oil deal shattered that perception. It proved that when Africa aligns with the right partners, it can reshape the rules of the game. Which raised the next question. If Africa could move from the sidelines to the main stage in energy politics, what would happen when this momentum collided with the rise of BRICS and the growing demand for a multipolar world? The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. For decades, U.S. strategy depended on keeping India close to counterbalance China. But Trump's tariff war shoved New Delhi in the opposite direction, closer to Beijing and deeper into BRICS. India's pivot to Nigeria fits into the BRICS narrative of South-South cooperation and independence from Western dictates. Russia continued selling discounted oil. China expanded infrastructure investment. Brazil deepened commodity ties. South Africa reinforced political solidarity. And now Nigeria, while not a formal member, was aligning itself with this network of alternative partnerships. For the U.S., this was a strategic defeat. Instead of isolating Russia, it had cemented Moscow's ties with India. Instead of limiting China's influence, it had driven India toward Beijing's camp. And instead of keeping Africa fragmented, it had elevated Nigeria as a respected partner on the global stage. This new reality meant U.S. leverage was shrinking rapidly. Tariffs, once a powerful tool of coercion, now looked clumsy. Threats once feared, now invited alternatives. And Washington's credibility, once taken for granted, now seemed riddled with contradictions. The India-Nigeria oil deal crystallized all of this. It wasn't just about energy flows. It was about who sets the rules of global order. And the answer was clear. The rules were no longer America's alone. What do you think? Did Trump just prove that U.S. power crumbles the moment Africa decides to play offense instead of defense? If India can defy Washington with Nigeria at its side, is this the birth of an Africa-Asia alliance strong enough to bury American dominance? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on whether African countries can offer the U.S.'s rivals the essential resources at high prices and capitalize on this opportunity. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.